Namaste. Aloha. My name is Janapati Das. Thank you for joining me for the Shri Ishopanishad class. We will be reading from Mantra 8 today. At this moment, I'd like to first offer my respects to you. Thank you for taking the time to tune in and listen to these classes. I would also like to offer my most humble obeisances unto Jagadguru Siddhaswarupananda Paramahamsa Srila Prabhupada, my life and soul, and to my spiritual grandfather, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, as we read through his Shri Ishopanishad and with the purport also by His Divine Grace Jagadguru Siddhaswarupananda Prabhupada in the 18 Pearls of Vedic Wisdom. So, as always, we are going to start off with some chanting, so please join along. Namo Siddhaswarupananda Paramahamsa Namine Lord Karuna Swarupaya Kali Krishna Sayate Namo Siddhaswarupananda Paramahamsa Namine Lord Karuna Swarupaya Radha Krishna Prasthayate Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasri Gaur Bhakti Aja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasri Gaur Bhakti Haribo Nitai Gaur Nitai Gaur Haribo 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 Nityananda Nityananda Haribo Chaitanya 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 Haribo Nityananda 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 Haribo Chaitanya 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 Haribo Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Jai Jai Guru Dev, Jai Jai Srila Prabhupada, Jai Jai Guru Dev, Jai Srila Prabhupada. Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Okay, so reading from Mantra 8. We will back up a little and read through the mantras as we've read them so far, starting with the invocation. Invocation. The personality of Godhead is perfect and complete, and because he is completely perfect, all emanations from him, such as this phenomenal world, are perfectly equipped as a complete whole. Whatever is produced of the complete whole is also complete by itself, and because he is the complete whole, even though so many complete units emanate from him, he remains the complete balance. Mantra 1. Everything animate or inanimate that is within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore accept only those things necessary for himself and accept which are set aside as his quota, and one must not accept other things, knowing well to whom they belong. Mantra 2. One may aspire to live for hundreds of years if he continuously goes on doing work in that way, because that sort of work will not bind him to the law of karma, and there is no alternative to this way for man. Mantra 3. The killer of the soul, whoever he may be, must enter into the planets known as the worlds of the faithless, full of darkness and ignorance. Mantra 4. The personality of Godhead, although fixed in his abode, is more swift than the mind and can overcome all others running. The powerful demigods cannot approach him. Although in one place he has control over those who supply the air and rain, he surpasses all in excellence. Mantra 5. The Supreme Lord walks and does not walk. He is far away, but he is very near as well. He is within everything, and again, he is outside of everything. Mantra 6. A person who sees everything in relation to the Supreme Lord and sees all entities as his parts and parcels, and who sees the Supreme Lord within everything, never hates anything nor any being. Mantra 7. One who always sees all living entities as spiritual sparks in quality, one with the Lord, becomes a truer knower of things. What is there as illusion or anxiety for him? Mantra 8. Sa parya gachukram akayam avranam ashna vibram shrudam apapa vijam kavir manishi paribuhu swayam bulur yata atta yatoritan yadadak chashvati vati pibya samabya. Sa, that person, parajat, must know in fact, Sukram, the omnipotent, Akayam, unembodied, Avranyam, without any reproach, Ashnaviram, without any veins, Shuddham, antiseptic, Apapa Vijam, prophylactic, Kavi, omniscient, Manishi, philosopher, Paribuhu, the greatest of all, Swayambhuhu, self-sufficient, Yata Dayata, in pursuance of, Arthan, desirables, Vayadyat, awards, Shashvati Byaha, memorial, Samabhyaha, time. Translation, Mantra 8. Such a person must know in fact the greatest of all, who is unembodied, omniscient, beyond reproach, without veins, pure and uncontaminate, the self-sufficient philosopher who is awarding everyone's desire since time immemorial. So Krishna is the most purifying. So we have these words pure and uncontaminated, like antiseptic, So supreme, omniscient, not in a body, not in a material body, that is, right? And is awarding everyone's desire since time immemorial. Purport. Here is a description of the transcendental and eternal form of the absolute personality of Godhead. The Supreme Lord is not formless. So this conclusive over and over again, and this Shri Ishopanishad unequivocally states that the Lord is not a formless. He has a formless Brahmajyoti, the energy of his body, which is impersonal. The Brahman, but he himself, as Bhagavan, is not formless. So anyone trying to state that will have to go against scripture here. He has his own transcendental form, which is not at all similar to those of the mundane world. The living entities in this world have their forms embodied by material nature, and they work like any material machines. The physiological and anatomical structure of the body of a living being must have a mechanical construction, which veins and so forth in the embodiment. But in the transcendental body of the Lord, there is nothing like veins. It is clearly stated here that he is unembodied. That means there is no difference between his body and soul, nor does he accept a body by the law of nature as we do. In the material concept of bodily life, the soul is different from the gross embodiment and subtle mind. The Supreme Lord is apart from any such compartmentalized arrangement, however. So there is Krishna has a supreme spiritual form, but it is not like our material form, which is full of faults and disease and is constructed in a way to run accordingly. There is nothing like a difference of the body and mind in the Supreme Lord. So the body, the mind, Krishna is one. In other words, our body, our mind is not who we are, but it's actually a covering of our true spiritual form. He is the complete whole, and his mind and body and he himself are all one and the same. So it's stated in the invocation, Krishna is complete, and all emanations that come from Krishna are complete. He is described there as the Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha. This means that he is the eternal form, fully representing transcendental existence, knowledge, and bliss. So Vigraha is a spiritual form. Sat Chit Ananda is eternally blissful and full of knowledge. The Vedic literature states clearly that he has a completely different kind of transcendental body, and thus he is sometimes described as formless. This formlessness means that he has no form like ours. So this, when people try to use this scripture as, well, see, the Shri Ishopanishad says that he's unembodied. Well, no, he doesn't take on a material body like we do. That's not what that means. But he does have a spiritual body. In the okay, wait a second. The Vedic literature states clearly that he has a different kind of transcendental body, and thus he is sometimes described as formless. This formlessness means that he has no form like ours, and he is devoid of a form which we can perceive. In the Brahma Samhita, it is further said that the Lord can do anything and everything with any one of the parts of his body. And it is said that with each and every one of the parts of his body, such as hands, he can do the work of other senses. So Krishna can use different senses for different purposes. We can't grab things with our tongue. We can't speak with our hand. We can't, so there are certain kinds of functions that our material body has that Krishna can do with anything that he has, because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He can see by his hands and feet. He can eat by his eyes. In the Shruti mantra, it is said that he has no hands and no legs like us, but that he has a different type of hand and leg by which he can accept all that we offer him and walk faster than anyone anywhere. These things are confirmed in this mantra of Shri Ishopanishad by the use of words like omnipotent. The Lord's Shri Vigraha, his worshipable form, which is installed in the temples by authorized acharyas who have realized the Lord in terms of mantra 7, is also non-different from the original form of the Lord. The original form of the Lord is that of Shri Krishna. Shri Krishna expands himself by an unlimited number of forms like Baladeva, Rama, Nrsimha, Varaha, etc. And all of these are one and the same personality of Godhead. So it isn't like multi-gods, right? It's actually monotheism. Krishna is the supreme. Similarly, the Arkara Vigraha, which is worshipped in the temples, is also expanded form of the Lord. By worshipping the Arka Vigraha of the Lord, one can at once approach the Lord, who accepts the service of the devotees by his omnipotent energy without any reproach. The Vigraha of the Lord descends by requests of the acharyas, the holy teachers, and works exactly in the original way by his omnipotent energy. Foolish people who have no knowledge of these mantras of Shri Ishopanishad or of any other Shruti mantras consider that the Shri Vigraha, who is worshipped by the pure devotees, is made of material elements. So this we've discussed before. In lieu of, sometimes, like in the Ten Commandments, it says, I shall have no other idols beside me. And what that really means is that if there are idols that are not God, that are not the Supreme Lord, they are idols. And we have idols that we idolize other living beings, we idolize money, we idolize power. These are actual true idols. But Krishna can come into a statue made of different elements, but we don't worship the elements of the statue. We don't worship the stones, and we don't worship we're worshiping Krishna, really, is what it's about. Krishna, Lord Chaitanya, and that is non-different. Shri Arka Vigraha. So it's in the form of the deity in the temple. To the imperfect eyes of the foolish people, or to the Kanishta Adhikaris, this form is considered material, but such people with little knowledge do not know that the Lord, being omnipotent and omniscient, can transform matter into spirit and spirit into matter as he desires. So we've been talking about this. The prasadam, right? Krishna's energies, and Krishna is in charge of all these energies. He can do what he pleases with these energies. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord regrets the fallen condition of men with little knowledge who regard the body of the Lord as material because he descends like a man into this world. Such poorly informed persons do not know the omnipotence of the Lord. To the mental speculators, therefore, the Lord does not manifest himself in fullness. He can be appreciated only in proportion to one's surrender to him. And the fallen condition of the living entities is due entirely to forgetfulness of our relationship with God. So this is, of course, hearkening back to this chapter 4, verse 8. I said from the early on in the chapter 4, which says, as they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. All men follow my path, O Arjuna, right? I think that's the verse. Basically, we had been talking about this, that there is a different varieties of surrender to God by the living entity in the material world. Maybe the living entity has a lot of desires, so he's like, well, I can do this surrender, go to church once every month, and give some money at the church, and and so God will reward him accordingly. We're all surrendering to a certain degree. And the more one surrenders, as Krishna tells Arjuna at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, just surrender unto me, a devotee surrenders his whole life. And how they surrender unto them is how much they are given the vision by Krishna to appreciate what is being said in these mantras about Krishna, about Krishna's unconditional love for us, about the spiritual master's unconditional love for us. We can experience that directly by our surrender to them. In this mantra, as well as in many others in the Vedas, it is clearly mentioned, from time immemorial the Lord is supplying. The living being, first of all, desires, and then the Lord supplies the object of desire in proportion to the degree of qualification. If a man wants to be a high court judge, he must not have only acquired the necessary qualifications, but he must also depend upon the disposition of the authority concerned who can award the title of high court judge. So we have activities that we do in the material world, and people will act accordingly to achieve such material benefits by doing worship or karmic, pious activities in the material world. So we do have to work for these things. The question is whether it's worth working getting the karmic reaction or doing these things for Krishna in the first place, and which doesn't give us the reward, but gives us the greatest reward of love for Krishna. This must be awarded by some superior authority. Similarly, the Lord always awards enjoyment to the living being in proportion to his qualifications, in other words, by the law of karma. So the karmic actions, how we do. Those qualifications, however, are not sufficient without the mercy of the Lord. So this is true. It's the mercy of Krishna, what we get, what is our quota. Ordinarily, the living being does not know what to ask from the Lord or what post to qualify himself for. When the living being knows his constitutional position, however, he asks to be accepted into the transcendental association of the Lord in order to render transcendental loving service unto him. So this is a great point, that basically people, pray to God for different things. Pray to God that you have a good wife, and you see these people come to the Hindu temples and they pray to Durga and Lakshmi and different demigoddesses to receive good material benefit. They don't really know what's in their best interest but the devotee of Krishna, understanding and coming to know their constitutional position as a spiritual being, part and parcel of Krishna, in a position of dominance, where we are rendering loving service to Krishna. This is our natural and our eternal status. So anything else is not really worth it. Instead of asking for this, the living being, under the influence of material nature, asks for many other things, and his mentality is described in the Bhagavad Gita as divided or splayed intelligence. So the intelligence is not really there. And as my dear spiritual master has said, is Jesus your doormat? He has a booklet called "Is Jesus Your Doormat?" where you basically pray. That's a little bit different. That was a different booklet. But he also refers to the Christian types who are order supplier. God is the order supplier waiter. Dear God, give me good health. Dear God, give me a good family. Dear God, give me money. Dear God, let my football team win. Dear God, let me help my mother not die. And then people get upset. They get mad at God because somebody they loved dies, which is what happens. And karmically, they have a poor fund of knowledge. They just think that God is supposed to benedict people because he created this world for us to enjoy. It's actually not for us to enjoy. It's because we want to be the enjoyer that we're here, and Krishna gives us the opportunity to do so. But this order supplying kind of thing, it's misguided and it's sort of like dualistic. You don't really love God. You just want God's things. That's basically what it is. And the atheist will come to you then and say, if God is all good, how would come bad things happen to God? Or why can't he just make it so that everybody, have a perfect life? What does that mean? What does that mean? How do you do that? in this material world when so many living entities are interconnected with each other. When you're trying to, I want to have enough food. Well, the food has to kill other living entities. You have to kill other living entities to get the food, bugs, and where is their right to exist? So that then it becomes a selfish thing. God should benedict my life to be good and wonderful, and I should have enough food, and I should have a loving family and lots of money, and there is that prosperity Christianity, prosperity gospel, where so-called Christians who are evangelists, I guess, they will pray, give money to the pastor, give the money to the church in hopes of getting, because God wants you to be rich with money, and so therefore you should give to the, I don't know, doesn't make any sense. So God wants you to enjoy in the material world. But see, this is all like really poor fund of knowledge, as Bhaktivedanta would say, about understanding about your relationship with God. Your relationship with God, whether you get money or not, that's all due to karmic reaction or through the mercy of Krishna. Great devotees have been able to have a lot of money, but they've never really been attached to it. They just use it in the service of God, and then when they have to leave this world, they leave all their money behind and go off to the forest in just a loincloth. So we should not be attached, which is why Lord Jesus Christ actually once said that it's easier for a camel to enter the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven, because of this sort of diverted Krishna. Basically Krishna wants your love. So what you're going to get, and whether or not, and this goes all the back to everything animate and inanimate belongs to Krishna anyway. So whether you have it or not, you should not be, or you're not getting it. You've been given a quota through your karmic reactions of what you've done in your past lives. You may have a lot of money, but you should be using that in the service of Krishna. You can still live a happy and fulfilled life, but the focus needs to be different. So a really wonderful point. Spiritual intelligence is one, but the opposite number is of many varieties. What did they say? Something about many branched. It was in the Bhagavad Gita. I can't remember what it was. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said that persons who are captivated by the temporary beauties of the external energy forget their real aim of life, which is to go back to Godhead. Yeah, it's so easy to just get completely sidetracked with having lots of money and trying to get, do economic development. And you forget you're in a human form of life where you should be cultivating your spiritual relationship with God, with Krishna. Forgetting this, one tries to adjust things by various plans and programs, which are compared with the process of chewing already chewed refuse. I love that. Chewing the chew. And there's that story in Roald Dahl, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I guess it's Veronica, whatever. And maybe, I can't remember which character it was. It was one of these girls, and all she did was chew gum. She'd stick gum on the bottom of her desk and come back to it several months later to chew it again. This is our attempt material enjoyment, because everything is just atoms, whether we're eating a fine pate or pasta or something, or chocolate, ice cream, or shit. It's the same atoms, it's the same molecule. It's things that have been chewed up, spit out, moved around all over the place, and just trying to enjoy this kind of, whatever. And meanwhile, we're just, wasting our life. It's another analogy my spiritual master has clarified is it's like the camel. The camels, they'll go and they love eating the thorns, and the reason is not because the thorns have any flavor in it, but because when it punctures their mouth, and they're bleeding and tasting the salt in their blood, and they're thinking, this is great, this is wonderful. We're like the camels, we're drawing the blood away from us. We're wasting our life. But the Lord is so kind that he allows the forgetful being to do so without interfering in his activities. So Krishna gives you what you want. If a living being wants to go to hell, the Lord allows him to do so without interference. And if he wants to go back home, back to Godhead, the Lord also helps him do that. God is described here as Paribhuhu, the greatest of all. No one is greater than or equal to him. Paribhuhu. God is great. Other living beings are described here as beggars who ask from the Lord, and the Lord supplies their desirables. If other entities were equal to the Lord in potency, or if they were omnipotent or omniscient, there would be no question of begging from the Lord, even for so-called liberation. So yeah, it's another good point. So arguing about these monists, people who believe that we're all one, right? We're just one white light, we're one energy, we are all God, right? There's plenty of people, and I know another person who thinks he's God, and he was telling one of his patients, his acupuncturist, he was telling his patients, I'm Jesus, you're Jesus, we're all Jesus. It's like, okay, you're not Jesus, man. So, yeah, so that's a good point. If you were really God, if you want to go walk around and you say that you're God, why are you begging and asking God for anything? You are God. So why don't you just make those things manifest in front of you? Why don't you just, if you want to be freed from the sinful reactions of this world, why don't you just free yourself? Why do you have to go to the bathroom? Why can't you make red lights turn green? Why can't you affect the weather? You're not God. It's just ridiculous for people who say this. The real liberation of the living being is to go back to Godhead. So we have a journey to return back to what was our normal position. The real liberation of the living being is to go back to Godhead. Otherwise, liberation is conceived by the impersonalists remains a myth. And the begging business for sense gratification has to continue eternally unless the beggar comes to his senses and realizes his constitutional position. It's madness. So you get into a human form of life and you completely waste it. You squander it trying to acquire temporary benefits in this material world, trying to strive to be happy. And you're begging, indirectly or directly begging from God to try to satisfy your senses, until you realize, wait a minute, this is not working. Even when I get the things I want, they don't make me happy. Or I have to lose them, or I have to give them away when I die, or they get stolen, or people break my heart, or I get diseases and I'm dying. So many things, This world is the greatest illusion because people, act like they're gonna live forever. So otherwise, you're gonna have to keep doing this, and you just keep. But unless you're like, wait a minute, why am I suffering? I need to find somebody who will teach me what is the real meaning of life. That takes a little bit of intelligence. And if you pray to Krishna, you pray to God, or even God in another name, they will show you the way. The Supreme Lord is self-sufficient. That's why we say the self-sufficient philosopher. When Lord Krishna appeared on earth 5,000 years ago, he displayed the full manifestation of Godhead by his various activities. In his childhood, he killed many powerful demons, and there was no question of acquiring such power by any extraneous effort. So he didn't need whatever to try to do it. He didn't have to weight lift or anything. He was like a little kid, and he was picking up Govardhan Hill with his pinky. He was killing massive, powerful, and just frightening demons with throwing around or kicking or sucking the life air out of He danced up with the gopis without any social restriction and without any reproach. Although the gopis approached him with feelings of amorous love, the mixing of the gopis and Lord Krishna has been worshipped even by Lord Chaitanya, who was a strict sannyasin and rigid follower of disciplinary regulations. To confirm this, Shri Ishopanishad says that he is antiseptic and prophylactic, pure and uncontaminated. He is antiseptic in the sense that even an impure thing in the estimation of the mundane world can become purified just by touching him. There's a lot of stories about that. There's the Putana. What was the name of the hunchback woman? She was, he picked her up, made her the most beautiful woman by just straightening her out. The word prophylactic refers to his association and is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. There it is said that a scrupulous devotee may appear in the beginning to be a durachara, or not well behaved, yet he is to be accepted as pure because he is on the right path. That is the prophylactic nature of the Lord's association. The Lord is apaparavidyam. That is, nothing like sin can touch him. Even if he may do something which appears to be sinful, such actions are all good, as there is no question of the Lord's being affected by sin. In all circumstances, he is Shuddham, most purified, often compared to the sun. The sun exacts moisture from many untouchable places on the earth, and it itself remains pure. In fact, it purifies obnoxious things by its sterilizing effect. If the sun is so powerful, although only a material object, we can imagine the purity and strength of the all-powerful Lord. So that's the end of Bhaktivedanta's purport. But I love this comparison to the sun, because oftentimes, you leave things that have been urinated on out in the sun, and it purifies. The sun is so purifying of diseases, and Krishna is the most purifying, just in contact of the names of Krishna, which are non-different than a person's heart is purified. Of so many hundreds of lifetimes of sinful reactions. So reading here, text 8, mantra 8. A self-realized person must know that, in fact, the greatest of all, who is omnipotent, omniscient, unembodied, beyond reproach, without veins, pure and uncontaminated, the self-sufficient philosopher who has been fulfilling everyone's desire since in time immemorial. So purport, this is from Jagadguru Siddhaswarapananda Paramahamsa Srila Prabhupada. Mantra 8 clearly states that God is a person, yet makes it clear that he is no ordinary person, nor ordinary persons him. So Krishna is the supreme personality of God and beyond all comprehension and ability for atheists to try to speculate about why and how, and how could God do this and how can God do that, and I was talking to my daughter the other day about the absurdity of the things that people speculate about or get upset about, where these little tiny living entities on a ball of earth rotating around a sun in a solar system, in a galaxy, in a universe so far, far away, just like whatever we have to say is really that important. God, the absolute truth, is sometimes called formless because he has no material form. God doesn't have a material form. The material energy is his energy, but he doesn't have a material form. God is never embodied or encased in matter, as the minute spirit souls sometimes are. As we learn in one of the first things we learn in spiritual life is aham brahmasmi. I am not the material body. I am not the designations of the body. I'm neither male, tall, old, short, fat, woman, man, gay, straight, black, white, Indian. These are all designations of the body that have absolutely nothing to do with the living entity, other than it being the encasement of what we're dealing with right now, the karmic reactions that we've gotten. But in time, all this composition, all these things, all the abilities that I've put into my head and whatnot will be gone. They just like sand. But as the spirit soul, will continue on. Yet the Lord, so we are encased in matter, right? The living entity is not, yet the Lord is not really formless. He has his own transcendental form. In this connection, Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami states, the forms of the living entities in this world are embodied in material nature, and they work like any material machine. The anatomy of a material body must have a mechanical construction with veins and so forth. But the transcendental body of the Supreme Lord has nothing like veins. It is clearly stated here that he is unembodied, which means that there is no difference between his body and soul, nor does he accept a body according to the laws of nature as we do. In the material conception of bodily life, the soul is different from the gross embodiment and subtle mind. However, the Supreme Lord is apart from such compartmentalized arrangement. So there's no compartment, body, subtle body, earth, water, fire, air, ether, it's everything we learn about what the material body is made of. And, the false ego, the intelligence. We do have, Krishna has his intelligence, of course, since he's a living entity, but it's all transcendental. There is no difference between his body and mind. He is the complete whole, and his body, mind, body, and he himself are all one and the same. In Brahma Samhita, there is a similar description of the Supreme Lord. He is described there as Satchitananda Vigraha, which means that he is the eternal form fully representing transcendental existence, knowledge, and bliss. The Vedic literature clearly states that he has a different kind of body, completely different kind of body. Thus, he is sometimes described as formless. This formlessness means that he has no form like ours and that he is devoid of a form which we can perceive. So that's from what we just read in Bhaktivedanta. Sometimes we are asked by the faithless, can you show me God? But the fact is the material eyes cannot see the non-material form of God. So this is the argument we make, that you can't measure, how do you prove God's existence through material measurements when you're using material energy to try to calculate a spiritual concept? It's impossible. The only thing that material speculation, material empirical knowledge, the things that are done through the material body can do is to point the direction by indirectly. Like we said, we have to read, we have scriptures that are in English or in different languages, Sanskrit. So we do use our mind, we do use our faculties. But we can't just say, okay, in fact, that's the way that we prove our existence, because the Vedas are truth. They're from the absolute truth. They're non-different than Krishna. And therefore, when you're looking for the proof is right in the pudding. It's right there. It's right here. And it's right here in the heart. When we chant Krishna's names and we come to realize what we hear from our spiritual master, it's very clear. In order to see the beautiful transcendental form, okay, so yes, yet God can be seen, but not with one's material eyes. In order to see the beautiful transcendental form of the Lord, a person must be completely free of envy. A person's heart must be cleansed of all contamination. Then with spiritual vision, a person can see God face to face. And this is what, in the Old Testament, we had a story of Moses had pure love for God and was able to see God, even though he had to transmit information that was understandable by the consciousness of the Hebrews that he was leading, which was not with, we had all these rules and regulations that God had set up. They've got to do these kinds of rules and regulations, not different than like the Vedic rules and regulations. But Moses was a pure devotee. He could actually see God face to face. And there was a scene where Aaron and Sarah got all upset because why does Jehovah or Yahweh not, see, I've done so much. Basically I'm up on the second in command, to Moses, and I'm really high up there. Why won't they be face to face, because that little bit of envy there, like, I'm more important, that God should come to see me. It's kind of like demanding of God, right? Moses didn't do that. So, and then he had to explain that. He said that he's very dear to me, and therefore, basically, to paraphrase, that's what it was going to be said. One can be free from envy and a heart cleansed of all contamination, and you can see God face to face. The process of bhakti yoga or meditation acts to purify one's heart of all the dust that has accumulated there. So we have this material covering by our interaction, by our desire to own and control things, to be basically God in this material world for our own pleasure and our own glorification. And that's like a dust covering we're complete illusion, thinking, the completely delusional attitude of being the body and the mind and the supreme controller. But the practice of bhakti yoga, the chanting of Krishna's names, meditation, acts as to purify one's heart of the dust that is accumulated there. That's why Lord Chaitanya said, all glories to the congregational chanting and singing of Krishna's names, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years together. So if a person follows this process, he will gradually become more and more purified. Then when his heart is washed with tears of love of God, he will see the Lord face to face. He will personally embrace the Lord on the transcendental platform. This 8th mantra is a further rebuttal of the I am Goddess philosophy. It specifically states that there exists a plurality of personality and that the Supreme Lord is above all others. God is the Supreme Person. It specifically declares that the Supreme Lord is forever unembodied, uncaged by material nature. It clearly states that God is never contaminated. Thus, the I am Goddess claim that the Lord comes under the laws of karma and gets caught on the wheels of birth and death is soundly defeated by this verse. So, a lot of yogis, which is in the school of Shankaracharya, of monism, I am God. We have people like Rajneesh, Satyasabhaba, Maharishi, Curly Neem Baba. There's been so many people in the past, Muktananda, and what's the guy, Yogi Paramahamsa, right? Yogi Bhajan. There's all these kinds of people that maybe you see their teas and their incenses. They're I am Goddess. They basically teach this philosophy that God can fall under the control of his inferior energy, which is fucking ridiculous. Sorry, excuse my language. It's just the truth. I am Goddism is really based on impersonalism, the denial of the personality of Godhead. The I am Goddess hold that the absolute truth is void of attributes and personality. They claim that in its original state, the absolute truth is without differentiation, form, personality, and so on. So to deny God a personality and a form, a spiritual form, basically is an incomplete understanding of. That's why it's understood that God is known in 3 forms: in Brahman realization, or the great white light that comes off the body of Bhagavan, with the expansion of Krishna into the hearts and atoms of all the living entities in the material world, as Paramatma, and then of course Bhagavan as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is complete and whole, as it says in the invocation. This other thing is not complete, and it contradicts the invocation verse by saying that God is just a void. They claim that in its original state, the absolute truth is without differentiation, form, personality, and so on, and then this impersonal spirit supposedly divides himself into countless numbers of personalities, forms, and so forth. So how does he do that? How does the void do that? How does it separate itself? It's usually attributed to people, doing something. The formless becomes the forms. The God becomes the world. The I am goddess Swami Muktananda says it is only the one that becomes many. It is only the one in the many. Behind the differences lie the undifferentiated. The undifferentiated manifests differences. It is only the non-dual that becomes dual, that reveals unceasingly. These guys do the gymnastics of the words, word salads. It doesn't mean anything. Their idea is that God, who is one impersonal whole, transforms himself into the world. So the world, the forms, the material universes, individual persons, and so forth, are really God in his transformed state. There are many flaws in the impersonalist I am God schools of thought. Let us only mention a few and then expand a little on the absolute truth, as it is put forth in the Shri Ishopanishad, Bhagavad Gita, and so on. This is a long chapter. First, the impersonalists claim that the absolute truth is devoid of qualities or attributes in its original state, yet they claim that this impersonal force made a decision to divide itself into many, to become the world and all entities. But decision-making is the action of a person, not of an impersonal force. Furthermore, decision-making implies a will and desire, both of which are attributes of a person. So we always see that when we have these things of attributes, things acting upon something, that it has to be a force that is acting upon it, and that is a person. Second, some impersonalists claim that this impersonal void became the many for the sake of enjoying himself, but they must go on to admit that the world is full of suffering, and that the Supreme Lord must struggle to liberate itself in question, from the mess he created. Thus, they are proposing that there is no peace or joy anywhere, in any condition, for the Supreme Lord. They say that in the undifferentiated condition there was no joy because there was no variety, activity, love, and so on, and this is why the one became the many in the first place. But then they say that in the differentiated condition there is nothing but suffering. Therefore, the absolute truth eternally alternates between an undifferentiated condition of eternality, but with no joy or bliss on the one hand, and a differentiated condition of variegatedness, activity, love, and so on, but with no eternality, happiness, or peace on the other. So their concept of God is that he, or it, is eternally bored or downright miserable, or a sadomasochist that would want to do that. Some impersonalists hold that it was not originally a conscious desire on the part of the void or the absolute truth to divide itself, and that in fact it's not really divided, but that somehow illusion or ignorance overcame the impersonal Godhead and caused it to view itself with divisions. Such people thereby commit the mistake of saying that the illusion or ignorance is more powerful than the Buddha mind or a great void. To say that the Buddha mind has been overcome by illusion is to say that the Buddha mind is not the original cause, nor is it all powerful. Or if it were God, God is not all powerful then if he comes under the illusion of something that's not as powerful. If this great void is the cause of everything, it must also be the cause of illusion or ignorance, Maya. That to say that the void is overcome by illusion means that the source of illusion must be other than the great void. After all, if the great void can be overcome by illusion, it means that illusion is more powerful than it. Since an offspring cannot be greater in power than its original source, illusion must have a source other than the great void. This, of course, nullifies their view that the great void is the original source, the original cause of all causes. So you can see they have like flipping and flopping, contradicting themselves over left and right. Such impersonalists are called Mayavadis because they propose that the absolute truth gets covered by illusion, Maya. I was saying that Maya is more stronger than the supreme truth. Without embarrassment at their obvious foolishness, they roam the world, teaching everyone that God forgot his identity and must practice some sort of meditation or austerity to remember it. And they make a lot of money and get a lot of followers from doing this. The absolute truth is put forward in the Shri Ishopanishad, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and other literatures on Bhakti Yoga. They state that the absolute truth, God, is impersonal and personal simultaneously. There is both an impersonal as well as a personal aspect of the absolute truth. The impersonal feature of the absolute truth is variously known as Brahman, or Brahman effulgence, or the Great Void, or the Buddha mind. It is an immaculate, radiant ocean of transcendental effulgence. It is beyond the material elements of earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. It is this Brahman effulgence that successful mystic yogis, Buddhists, and others have glimpsed or temporarily merged with. And my spiritual master did too, many times. It is the goal of the impersonalists to merge into this impersonal Brahman. Those who call themselves bodhisattvas refrain from merging into this great void, supposedly in order to remain in the world of temporary forms, so as to help others reach the goal. As far as impersonalists are concerned, this impersonal Brahman is the last word of the absolute truth, the cause of all causes. But they are mistaken. The impersonal Brahman, although it is the formless void from which springs the countless forms of the world, is not the original cause. This impersonal feature of the absolute truth springs from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Personality of Godhead states in the Bhagavad Gita, and I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness, which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal. Chapter 14, verse 27. The Brahma Samhita states, I serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose transcendental bodily effulgence is known as the impersonal Brahman, which is unlimited, unfathomed, and all-persuasive. 5:14. Like sun rays that emanate from the sun globe, the Brahman effulgence emanates from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. O my Lord, sustainer of all that lives, your real face is covered by your dazzling effulgence. Please remove that covering and exhibit yourself to your pure devotee. Shri Ishopanishad, Mantra 15. Ooh, the little preliminary foreshadowing of what we're going to get. Impersonalists cannot pierce through the dazzling effulgence of the Brahman. They are transcendentalists, no doubt. That is, they perceive one of the features of the absolute truth, but they are unable to see the Supreme Person. So this is a much more complete understanding. So this path can bring people to temporarily merge into this great white light. But I say temporary because it's not an eternal status. You still need to have a loving relationship with someone. So you need to come down, and oftentimes these people, they think they're the Supreme Lord, and they open hospitals and try to fulfill or have loving relationships with people, and they try to feel like they're having that loving relationship with somebody, which is really supposed to be with Krishna. So they have to understand that Krishna is a real person and not just his partial impersonal feature. The absolute truth is a person. His forms, names, and activities are all transcendental. Let me say, instead of limiting our vision, let's see, did I? I think I was reading. Impersonalists cannot pierce through the dazzling effulgence of the Brahman. They are transcendentalists, no doubt. And that is, they perceive one of the features of the absolute truth, but they are unable to see the Supreme Person. Not knowing the transcendental, non-material, eternal, blissful form of the Supreme Personality of God, they remain convinced that the original cause of all causes is impersonal. And by their mental speculation, they try to squeeze out some philosophical basis for their conclusions, but is full of flaws, as we can see. Actually, they don't take it even from the original scriptures. They try to interpret the scriptures a certain way. They write commentaries on the Vedanta Sutras, these impersonalists have all these new books that people will study and read based on impersonalism, a misinterpretation of the absolute truth. Instead of limiting our vision of the absolute truth to its impersonal feature, we should take the information from the Shri Ishopanishad. The absolute truth is a person. His forms, names, and activities are all transcendental. He is the cause of all causes. All energies emanate from him. The impersonal Brahman, the living entities, the material worlds, all ultimately come from him. So in a sense, nothing can be separated from him. Yet he remains aloof from everything. Although everything comes from him, he is not diminished in any way. As stated in the invocation mantra to the Shri Ishopanishad, because God is the complete whole. Even though so many complete units emanate from him, he remains the complete balance. Wonderful, explains that very clearly. Many impersonalists say that God becomes the world, thereby nullifying his own existence as God. Sometimes they say God is like a piece of paper tearing itself up into many different pieces. Thus God becomes fragmented and scattered everywhere. Being scattered in bits and pieces everywhere, the original unseparated whole no longer exists other than in the separated condition of the world. All living entities, it's a long chapter, and so on. In other words, the impersonalist holds that God, the one, is transformed into the many forms of the world, but the Lord is never transformed. Energies emanate from him, yet he still remains as he is. The Lord states, "Behold my mystic opulence, although I am the maintainer of all living entities, and although I am everywhere, still myself is the very source of creation." Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 5. The absolute truth is unchanging, and although everything emanates from him, he still exists. Countless billions of sun rays emanate from the sun, but the sun globe still exists. A mother cat may have many kittens, but her existence is not thereby so nullified. Similarly, there are many energies emanating from the Supreme Lord, yet he still remains himself undiminished. Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami explains that it is not the absolute truth that is transformed, but rather it is the absolute truth who transforms his energies. So just like a CEO might be in charge of a business and is doing the changes of things going on in the company, similarly, the absolute truth is transforming their energies because he is the source of all the energy. A businessman transforms his energy, establishing many big factories or business organizations, yet remains a person. Yet he remains a person, although his energy has been transformed into these many factories or business concerns. The Mayavadi philosophers fail to understand this simple fact. Their tiny brains and poor fund of knowledge cannot afford the sufficient enlightenment that when a man's energy is transformed, the man himself is not transformed. He remains the same person. Srila Vyasadeva has explained that the absolute truth is a person who has different potencies. Merely by his desire that there be creation, and by his glance, sa aikshata, he created this material world, sa ashurjata. After creation, it remains the same person. He remains the same person. He is not transformed into anything. One should accept that the Lord has inconceivable energies, and that it is by his order and will that varieties of manifestation have come into existence. The absolute truth has inconceivable energies, as confirmed in the Svetasvatara Upanishad Parashya Shaktir Vividaiva Shruyate, and the entire cosmic manifestation is evidence of these different energies of the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is a fact, and therefore whatever is created by the Supreme Lord is also factual. So the material world is a factual place. It's not illusory. It's only illusory because it's a temporary and things are changing consistently. But the complexity of our universe, even scientists, even though they've discovered so much, every time they point their telescope somewhere and they learn something new, they realize that 100 years of theories and whatnot have been thrown out the window because it's not exactly as they see it. So things in this universe alone are so complex and so in depth that we really don't understand it. Everything is a true and complete Purnam. But the original Purnam, the absolute truth, always remains the same. Purna Purnam Udajate Purnasya Purnamadaya. This absolute truth is so perfect that although innumerable energies emanate from him and manifest creations which appear to be different from him, he nevertheless maintains his personality. He never deteriorates under any circumstances. To be perfectly situated in the absolute truth, the yogi must factually know the greatest of all, who is omnipotent, omniscient, unembodied, beyond reproach, without veins, pure and uncontaminated, the self-sufficient philosopher who has been fulfilling everyone's desires since time immemorial. Wonderful. Just very, very clear, nothing confusing at all about this. And we will continue with Mantra 9 next time. Thank you very much. Haribol.